A billionaire who thought he was infertile accidentally met 3 children in the park while taking a walk. When he got closer, he was shocked to discover that they look a lot like. Joseph Ellis straightened his silk tie as he stepped out of the towering building where his company was headquartered. The brisk New York wind hit him like a refreshing shock, a stark contrast to the hours spent in a cramped meeting room. His footsteps reverberated on the sidewalk as he headed towards Central Park, needing a moment to escape the relentless corporate grind. Upon entering the park, the city's frenetic pace faded into the cheerful shouts of children and the soft rustle of leaves. A familiar ache settled in Joseph's chest, an emptiness that even his wealth couldn't fill. Watching families around him, he noticed fathers pushing strollers, mothers embracing their children, and couples strolling hand in hand. It was a life he had convinced himself was out of reach. Lost in thought, Joseph nearly stumbled over a ball that had rolled up to his feet. He bent down, looking around to see where it had come from. And then, time seemed to freeze. 3 young boys, all around 5, were running toward him, not only filled with energy, but each bearing an uncanny resemblance to Joseph's own childhood self. He felt his heart stop as he took in the sight. The boys had the same tousled brown hair, vivid green eyes, and even the tiny birthmark near his left ear, replicas of himself in miniature form. "Sir, could we have our ball back?" one of the boys asked, snapping Joseph out of his daze. With shaking hands, he passed the ball over, unable to look away from the faces that mirrored his own. What's your name?" he managed, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm Sean," the first boy said with a grin, pointing to his brothers. "And these are Dennis and Peter." As if fate needed to make their bond even clearer, Peter tripped on a tree root, tumbling onto the grass. A protective instinct Joseph had never experienced before drove him to rush over. "You okay, champ?" he asked softly, lifting Peter back to his feet. His large hands rested gently on the boy's small shoulders, and a powerful wave of emotion overwhelmed him. Peter sniffed, but gave a brave nod. "I'm okay. Just a little scrape," he replied, holding out his knee with a minor cut. Joseph felt a surge of emotion. How could he feel so drawn to these boys he'd only just met? And why did they seem so familiar, so much like him? "Boys, time to head out," called a woman's voice, and Joseph looked up to see a young, striking woman approaching. She stopped in her tracks as she spotted Joseph kneeling beside Peter, her eyes widening in recognition. "Mr. Ellis?" she asked, her voice unsure. Joseph slowly stood, shifting his gaze from the woman to the kids. "You know me?" He extended a hand, and she shook it with a hint of nerves in her smile. "Samantha Saunders. I'm a social worker," she introduced herself. "Actually, I was planning to reach out to your office this week." Joseph's heart pounded as he caught a glimpse of something in her expression, a mix of nervousness and anticipation that unsettled him. "About, what exactly?" he asked, noting her meaningful look toward the boys, now happily playing, unaware of the tension simmering between the adults. "It's a long story, Mr. Ellis. Something we should discuss privately." Joseph felt his whole world shift. In just a few moments, his carefully ordered life had spun out of control. He glanced again at the boys, Sean, Dennis, and Peter, with a combination of anxiety and awe. "Are they—" he began, unable to finish the sentence. Samantha gave a gentle nod. "Yes, Mr. Ellis. They're your children." Her words struck him like a thunderbolt. Children. His children. But how could that be? He'd spent his life believing he couldn't have kids, resigned to a solitary path at the height of his career. Watching the boys, so full of spirit and innocence, Joseph felt a long dormant need rising within him, a need to protect, to nurture, to love. Emotions he'd thought he'd never know. "I think," he managed to say in a quiet tone, "we have a lot to discuss, Miss Saunders." Samantha gave him an understanding smile. "Yes, we do. And believe me, Mr. Ellis, this is just the beginning." As the sun set over Central Park, casting soft shadows across the grass, Joseph Ellis stood at the brink of a life-altering journey, a journey that would force him to face his past, challenge every assumption he'd held about himself, and maybe, just maybe, fill the emptiness he had carried for so long. With one last look at his sons, Joseph followed Samantha, ready to unearth the truth behind the mystery that tied his past to his future in ways he'd never imagined. His office at the top of a Manhattan skyscraper might have given him a view of the whole city, but this new path ahead would bring him a perspective on life he never dreamed possible. That afternoon, the bustling city outside barely registered in his mind. Joseph's attention was locked on Samantha Saunders, who sat across from him, a heavy briefcase balexandist on her knees. "Mr. Ellis," she started, her voice gentle yet resolute. "What I'm about to tell you will sound unbelievable, but please hear me out with an open heart." Joseph gave a slight nod, feeling tense. "Please, just call me Joseph. After what I saw at the park, I'm ready for anything." Samantha allowed herself a small smile and opened the briefcase. 3 months ago, Sean, Dennis, and Peter were discovered in an orphanage in upstate New York. There's no record of their births, no trace of any family. "The strange part," she continued, sliding a file toward him, "they just appeared there, like out of thin air." Joseph frowned, disbelief flickering in his eyes. "How's that possible? Aren't they around 5 years old?" 4 years and 8 months, to be precise, Samantha clarified. "And here's where it gets more complex." She passed a photograph across the table, a clinical image displaying 3 identical infants in incubators. Joseph's stomach twisted as he took it in. "These are—" he started, then trailed off as Samantha nodded. "Yes, Sean, Dennis, and Peter," she confirmed. "This picture was taken 4 years and 9 months ago." Joseph stood abruptly, stepping over to the window, catching his reflection, pale and shaken. "Are you suggesting they aged a whole year in just a month?" he asked, voice barely a whisper. "Precisely. We suspect they may have been part of an accelerated growth experiment. But since arriving at the orphanage, they've been developing normally." Joseph turned back to face her, confusion clouding his face. "And where do I fit into this? How could they be my children if I never—" He broke off, at a loss for words. Samantha hesitated, then asked gently, "Joseph, do you remember donating sperm for research about 5 years ago?" The realization struck Joseph like a lightning bolt. Years ago, as a favor to an old college friend, Dr. Alexander Wheeler, who was researching fertility issues, he'd agreed. It had seemed harmless back then. "Oh my God," Joseph murmured, sinking back into his seat. "Did Alexander—" Samantha leaned forward, her eyes filled with empathy. "We're not sure of all the details yet, but the DNA tests confirm it. You are the boy's biological father." The words hung in the air, their weight settling in as Joseph processed the revelation. His mind buzzed with questions, apprehensions, and a surprising flicker of optimism. "So, what does this mean?" he finally asked. Samantha exhaled, gathering her thoughts. "Well, legally, you have parental rights. But I know this is a unique and complex situation. The boys are currently in foster care," she continued, but Joseph cut in, his tone unexpectedly assertive. "I want to see them, really get to know them." A warm smile spread across Samantha's face. I was hoping you'd say that. I think we can arrange it. Over the following days, Joseph found himself in a world he hadn't known he longed for. He spent hours at the park with Sean, Dennis, and Peter, enthralled by their wild imaginations, addressing their never-ending inquiries, and, for the first time in years, laughing as he used to. With each moment, Joseph noticed little pieces of himself in the boys. Sean's furrowed brow when he focused, just like his own. Dennis's careful observations before jumping in. Peter's laugh, a mirror to Joseph's own laughter as a kid. But with every joy came a haunting question. He had doubts while lying in bed at night. Could he actually be a good father? How would he shield them from the shadows of his past? And what exactly had Alexander been involved in? One busy afternoon while the boys played, Joseph sensed Samantha coming up behind him. "They look happy," she murmured, with a soft smile. Joseph nodded, his throat tight. "They're incredible, Samantha. But what if I mess it all up? What if I'm not enough?" Samantha rested a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Joseph, the fact that you care so deeply already shows you'll be a great dad. No one has all the answers. It's a journey, and you'll figure it out." Her words grounded him, yet he knew there were pieces of the puzzle still missing. He needed answers, and he knew only one person could provide them. "I have to find Alexander," he said with a newfound resolve. "I need to know what he did, and why." Samantha took a deep breath, feeling uncertain. "Joseph, are you absolutely certain? This might bring up things we can't undo." Joseph glanced over at the boys, a fierce protectiveness stirring within him. "I am. For their future, I have to face the truth, no matter how difficult it gets." As the sun dipped lower, casting warm shades of pink and orange across the New York skyline, Joseph braced himself for a journey that would forever alter his life. He was stepping into a quest for answers that might cost him everything familiar, but held the possibility of a future he had never dared to hope for. Glancing one last time at his sons, Joseph steeled himself to dive into the mystery of their past, resolved to safeguard them no matter the cost, and maybe, along the way, awaken a part of himself that had long been buried. The secret lab was tucked away in a rundown warehouse on the outskirts of New Jersey. Joseph parked his sleek car at a cautious distance. The difference between his polished vehicle and the crumbling structure around him couldn't have been more stark. After a moment's hesitation, he stepped out, adjusting his coat as if it could shield him from what lay ahead. Alexander's message had been vague. "Come alone. I have the answers you're looking for." Joseph was wary of trusting his old acquaintance, yet his need for the truth about his children propelled him forward. Inside, the warehouse was a maze of high-tech gadgets and blinking screens. Alexander Wheeler was there, hunched over a microscope at the room's center. Time hadn't been gentle on him. His once dark brown hair had faded to gray and thinned, and lines of worry etched his face. "Joseph," Alexander said, rising abruptly. "You showed up." "Like I had much of a choice," Joseph replied, his tone icy. "Considering you somehow used my DNA to create 3 children without even telling me," he added, his voice sharp. Alexander took a heavy breath, motioning for Joseph to follow him to a room brimming with files and vials, carefully labeled. "What I'm about to reveal isn't just a breach of standard ethics, Joseph," Alexander began, voice unsteady. "But you need to see why. We were so close to a groundbreaking discovery." Joseph felt anger simmer within him. Groundbreaking. "You took on the role of God, Alexander. These children, my children, they're human beings, not test subjects." Alexander raised his hands in a calming motion. "I get it, I do. But hear me out from the top." He reached for a thick file on a nearby shelf. 5 years ago, When you donated your sperm, we were testing a new fertilization method, not just to assist couples who couldn't conceive, but to try and tackle genetic diseases right at the start. Joseph listened, feeling both intrigue and dread twist within him. Alexander went on. Her DNA was flawless. There were no signs of genetic vulnerabilities to major illnesses. We used it as a base to create genetically modified embryos. The idea was to observe them briefly, then ethically terminate them. But something went awry. Joseph had a sinking feeling. Alexander nodded grimly. The embryos developed way faster than anticipated. Within days, they were at a stage that would normally take months to reach. Before we knew it, 3 perfectly healthy babies were born. Joseph felt his knees weaken and steadied himself against the wall. My God, Alexander, what have you done? Alexander confessed, his voice laced with guilt. We panicked. We knew if anyone found out, everything would be seized and destroyed, including the children. So we hid them, accelerated their growth artificially so they'd seem like typical children, and placed them in the adoption system. The silence that followed was thick. Joseph took it all in, caught between anger, fear, and an unexpected compassion for these kids who'd been thrown into this situation. Why are you telling me now? He finally managed. Alexander paused before speaking. Because they're in danger, Joseph. The government got wind of the experiment. There are powerful interests who want those kids, to study them, to duplicate the process. I can't let that happen. They deserve a chance at real life. A fierce protectiveness rose in Joseph. I won't let anyone near them, he replied firmly. It won't be easy, Alexander warned. These people have resources and connections. They're not giving up anytime soon. Joseph straightened, his eyes filled with steely resolve. I won't either. These kids are mine, Alexander. I'll guard them with everything I've got. As Joseph stepped out of the lab, he felt a profound shift in his life. He was no longer just a solitary billionaire. He was now a father on a mission. Safeguarding Sean, Dennis, and Peter wasn't going to be about money alone. It would demand every ounce of bravery, love, and selflessness he had. On the way back into Manhattan, Joseph made a call. Samantha, we need to talk. Things are way more tangled than we thought. Driving through New York's bustling streets, Joseph sensed the heavy burden of responsibility pressing down on him. But that weight also brought a feeling he hadn't felt in ages. A purpose. For the first time in years, he had something real to stand up for, something that didn't involve contracts or corporate gains. Looking up at the city's night sky, Joseph made a silent vow to his children. He would protect, love, and give them the normal lives they'd been deprived of. He knew the path ahead would be rough, filled with threats and unknowns. But Joseph Ellis was ready to face every obstacle, not just for himself, but for a family he'd never anticipated, but now couldn't imagine his life without. As dawn's light crept through the curtains of his high-rise apartment, Samantha Saunders' face appeared tense, listening intently as Joseph recounted his talk with Alexander. Her expression grew more alarmed with each revelation. My God, Joseph, she murmured when he was done. That's incredible. Joseph nodded, rubbing his hand across his face in exasperation. I know. Now we have to protect the kids from people who only see them as test subjects. Samantha walked to the window, silhouetted against the iconic New York skyline. So, what's your plan? Joseph paused, choosing his words carefully. I'm going for full custody. I want to bring them home. Samantha turned to him, clearly stunned. Joseph, that's a big step. Are you really certain? He met her gaze, unwavering. Absolutely. They're my kids, Samantha. I have to keep them safe. When we met in the park that first time, I was honestly worried you wouldn't be open to them. I'm glad to see I was wrong." Joseph felt a warmth settle in his chest at her words. "I didn't expect to feel this way either," he replied. "But from the moment I laid eyes on them, it felt like a missing piece of me had finally found its place." Samantha moved closer, resting a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "I'll do everything I can to help with the guardianship process," she said. "But Joseph, you have to realize raising 3 kids, all 4 years old and each with their own needs, won't be a simple task." Joseph nodded, his resolve clear. "I know, and I'm ready to take it on." In the weeks that followed, his once cold, ultra-modern penthouse began to change. What used to be a quiet, minimalist space became filled with energy and joy. Bright-colored toys filled every corner, drawings now decorated the sleek steel fridge, and laughter echoed through the halls. Joseph discovered that being a dad was both the hardest and the most rewarding experience of his life. Each day held new surprises and lessons. One afternoon, while helping Dennis tackle a tough puzzle, Joseph noticed the same concentrated look he himself wore when faced with a challenging problem at work. "Hey Dennis," Joseph said softly, "sometimes, if a problem seems tough, it can help to look at it from a new angle." Dennis looked up, his green eyes filled with curiosity. "What do you mean, Dad?" Joseph felt his heart warm at the sound of Dad. It was still new to him, but each time felt more natural. "How about we flip the puzzle upside down?" he suggested. "Sometimes you see patterns you didn't notice before." They turned the puzzle, and to Dennis's amazement, the pieces started to fit. "Wow, it worked!" Dennis exclaimed, hugging Joseph with excitement. Joseph returned the embrace, feeling a surge of love and protectiveness. In those little moments, he knew every challenge was worth it. Meanwhile, Sean was showing an impressive knack for negotiation, constantly mediating his brother's disagreements with wisdom beyond his years. And Peter, the most sensitive of the 3, displayed a talent for music, often spending hours playing the piano Joseph had impulsively bought. Samantha became a steady presence in their lives, not just as a social worker, but as a friend and a confidant for Joseph. She helped him navigate the highs and lows of parenting with patience and insight. One night, after the kids were asleep, Joseph and Samantha sat quietly together on the balcony. As he gazed over the glimmering cityscape, Joseph felt Samantha's encouraging presence beside him. "You're really making strides, you know," she said, her gentle gaze resting on him. Joseph gave a tired but contented smile. "I still have a long journey ahead, but for the first time it feels like I'm doing something that matters," he replied. Samantha nodded, understanding in her eyes. "They've transformed you," she said quietly. Joseph agreed, reflecting. "I used to see success in terms of money and numbers. Now," he paused, searching for the words, "now, it's all about seeing their smiles, hearing their laughter. It's knowing that I'm leaving a positive mark on their lives." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the faint hum of the city below. Joseph sensed a growing bond with Samantha, a shared understanding that stretched beyond work. The sharp ring of Joseph's phone, however, broke up their moment. His heart quickened when he saw the caller ID. It was Alexander. "Joseph," Alexander's voice came through, tense. "They're making a move. We need to act right away." The cold anxiety Joseph had kept under control for weeks surged back. He looked over at Samantha, noting the worry mirrored in her face. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice laced with tension. Joseph took a steady breath, knowing what was about to unfold. The time had come to fight for his children's safety. As night fell over the city, Joseph accepted that his days of calm were over. The battle to protect his boys and give them a stable life was just beginning, But with Samantha by his side and his deep love for his sons, he was ready for whatever lay ahead. He glanced back at the room where Sean, Dennis, and Peter slept soundly, making a silent vow to shield them from harm. Once a solitary billionaire, Joseph was now a dedicated father, ready to face down any threat. His office was buzzing with urgency. Lawyers, investigators, and security specialists moved purposefully, turning the corporate space into a command center. And at the heart of it all, Joseph stood firm, unwavering. Joseph's weary yet resolute gaze was locked onto a monitor, its screen filled with intricate data patterns. "Mr. Ellis," a voice called out over the background chatter. It was Shirley Bennett, head of his legal team. "We have an update on the custody attempts," she said, her tone cautious. Joseph turned, anticipation evident in his expression. Shirley paused briefly before speaking again. "It's complicated. Since the children technically don't have birth certificates or a traceable origin, we're up against a lot of legal challenges." Joseph felt an immense weight settle over him. Each day without custody left Sean, Dennis, and Peter exposed. "Do whatever you have to, Shirley," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Cost doesn't matter. Use every resource we have." Just then, Samantha entered, her face a blend of worry and resolve. "Joseph, we've got a problem. The orphanage is facing pressure to release details on the kids. I think it's connected to that group Alexander warned us about." Joseph's pulse quickened. "We need to relocate them now." "Where?" Samantha asked, a slight edge of panic slipping through her voice. Joseph closed his eyes, making a quick decision. "The house in Vermont. It's remote and secure. We can keep everyone safe there while we work this out." Samantha gave a firm nod and immediately started dialing, setting plans into motion. Joseph turned to the rest of the team. "I want everything arranged within 2 hours. Highest security, complete secrecy. No one outside this room knows where we're going." As the team sprang into action, Joseph took a moment to let his guard down. He walked to the window, looking out over the city below, struck by how drastically his life had shifted. Just months ago, he had been focused on landing his next major deal. Now, he was all in on protecting 3 young lives that had quickly become his whole world. "It's okay to feel scared, you know." Samantha's gentle voice interrupted his thoughts. She had quietly approached, handing him a warm cup of coffee. Joseph took it with a grateful smile. "Is it that obvious?" he asked. Samantha just shrugged, a knowing smile on her face. "Only for those who are truly paying attention." They sat together in quiet, absorbing the view. "You know," Joseph started, his voice soft, "I used to think I understood fear, like losing a big contract, or watching the stock market nosedive." He paused, searching for the right words. "But this, it's different. It hits you in the gut." The thought of something happening to the kids made his chest tighten. Samantha reached over, placing a steadying hand on his arm. "That's what being a dad is, Joseph," she said gently. "That kind of fear doesn't go away completely, but it's what pushes us to protect them, to stand up for them." Joseph nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for Samantha's support. "How am I supposed to explain all of this to them? They're still so young." Samantha replied calmly, "With honesty. Kids are often tougher and wiser than we realize. Keep it simple and reassure them that you'll be there no matter what." Just then, a security guard approached. "Mr. Ellis, everything's set up. We can head out whenever you're ready." Joseph exhaled deeply, squaring his shoulders. It was time to be strong for the boys. The drive to the cabin was tense. Joseph kept an eye on Sean, Dennis, and Peter in the rearview mirror. Their innocent faces were unaware of the danger hovering over them. They thought of the trip as a fun adventure, asking endless questions about the cabin and what they'd do there. By the time they arrived, darkness had settled. The cabin, usually a calm escape, now felt like a fortress. Guards patrolled the grounds, and the latest security systems had been hastily installed. Once the kids were asleep, Joseph joined Samantha on the balcony, both tired yet alert. "What now?" Samantha asked, her voice barely a murmur against the quiet night. Joseph looked up at the stars, summoning strength. "We fight. With everything in us. They deserve a chance at a normal life. To just be kids." Samantha slipped her fingers into his, silently offering her support. Her touch grounded him, a source of comfort in the approaching chaos. "We're not alone in this," she reminded him softly. Joseph squeezed her hand, feeling immense gratitude for her steady presence. "No, we're not." As the night wore on, Joseph braced himself for the battles that lay ahead. Legal battles loomed, security threats emerged, and moments of doubt lingered. But as he looked at the quiet house where his children slept, an unbreakable determination took root in his heart. He was Joseph Ellis, a man who had built his empire from the ground up. Now he was facing the biggest challenge of his life, caring for and protecting 3 young lives that had come into his world unexpectedly, and he was prepared to meet this challenge with every ounce of strength, love, and resource he had. The moon cast its light across his property, creating long, stretching shadows, but to Joseph, it was a reminder that even the darkest nights held their light, and he was determined to be that light for Sean, Dennis, and Peter, no matter what lay ahead. In the early dawn of Vermont, a soft mist settled over the fields surrounding the cottage. Joseph, who had barely slept, watched through the window as the first rays of morning began to lift the haze. The sound of small feet rushing down the hallway broke the silence. "Daddy," came Peter's excited voice, echoing down the corridor. "Look what I found." Joseph turned, a tired but warm smile brightening his face as Peter bounded into the room, clutching an old photo album. "Where'd you find that, champ?" Joseph asked, lifting Peter onto his lap. "In the attic," Peter answered, eyes sparkling. "There are lots of pictures of you as a kid." Joseph felt his heart skip. He had forgotten about that album, a keepsake from his childhood that his mother had preserved with care. Sitting on the bed's edge, with Peter beside him, Joseph opened the album, its yellowed pages revealing a smiling boy who, to his surprise, looked strikingly like the triplets. "Wow, Dad, you look just like us," Peter exclaimed, pointing at a photo of Joseph at about 5 years old. Joseph felt a swelling of emotion. "You're right, son. There's a lot of me in you." Just then, Sean and Dennis entered the room, followed closely by Samantha, who carried a breakfast tray. "What's that?" Sean asked, joining them on the bed. His curiosity piqued. "Old pictures of Dad," Peter replied proudly. Samantha set the tray on the bedside table and settled into the armchair nearby, watching the moment with a soft smile. As they flipped through the photo album, Joseph found himself reminiscing about moments from his childhood, some of which he hadn't thought about in years. The boys listened intently, peppering him with questions and chuckling at young Joseph's antics. Suddenly, Dennis's voice broke through, serious and thoughtful. "Dad, how come we don't have any baby pictures?" The room went quiet. Joseph looked at Samantha, who gave him an encouraging nod. Taking a steady breath, he closed the album and drew the boys closer to him. "Kids, there's something important I need to share with you. It's not the easiest thing to explain, but you're all bright and strong, and I think you'll understand." With carefully chosen words, Joseph began to tell them about the experiment, the unusual way they had come into the world. He described their accelerated growth and emphasized that, despite the unique circumstances of their birth, his love for them was deep and genuine. The boys listened, captivated and a bit confused. Sean, ever the curious one, had plenty of questions about the science behind it all. Dennis seemed more concerned with the emotional side of things, while Peter's eyes lit up, wondering if it meant they had superpowers. "Each of you is unique," Joseph said, his voice thick with emotion, "not because of how you were born, but because of who you are, your amazing talents, personalities, and big hearts." For a moment, the boys sat silently, absorbing his words. Then, to Joseph's surprise, they all hugged him at once. "We love you, Dad," Sean said on behalf of his brothers. Joseph felt tears streaming down as he hugged them tightly. "I love you more than anything," he whispered. Samantha, who had been quietly listening, approached, her eyes glistening with tears. "You're an incredible family," she said gently. Joseph met her gaze, full of gratitude. "And you're a part of this family, Samantha," he replied. "We wouldn't have made it here without you." The buzz of Joseph's phone at that precise moment interrupted the scene. It was Alexander. "Joseph," Alexander's voice was tense. "They're on the move. I've got new information about the group targeting the kids. It's worse than we thought." Joseph's heart pounded. "What did you find out?" "It's not safe to talk on the phone," Alexander responded urgently. "I need to meet you in person. It's critical." Joseph paused, looking between his kids and Samantha. "All right, where's the meetup?" he asked. After setting a secure location, Joseph ended the call, feeling the heavy weight of responsibility settle over him. "I need to head out for a few hours," he told Samantha. "Can you keep an eye on the kids?" Samantha nodded firmly. "Of course. Stay safe, Joseph." As he got ready to go, he took one last look at his kids, who were happily playing, seeming more relaxed after he shared his secret with them. A surge of love, mixed with fear and determination, rose within him. "I'll keep them safe," he murmured, no matter what it took. With a final glance at Samantha, who was watching him with both worry and encouragement, Joseph left, prepared to face whatever lay ahead. The conversation with the boys had fortified his resolve. Now, more than ever, he was determined to give them a safe, happy life. Driving down the winding road from his estate, Joseph knew he was about to dive even deeper into the secrets surrounding his children's origins. But with their love as his anchor, he felt ready for anything. The deserted diner on the edge of Burlington had an eerie, old-time feel, like something straight out of a classic thriller. Joseph parked a short distance away, eyes scanning for any unusual activity. Inside, the place was empty, save for one lone figure in a booth at the back. "Alexander," Joseph greeted him coldly as he slid into the seat across from him. Alexander looked older, weary with dark circles under his eyes, his hands barely steady as he clutched an untouched cup of coffee. "Joseph, I appreciate you coming," he began, his voice low and urgent. "What I'm about to tell you changes everything." Joseph leaned forward, tense. "Go on, I'm listening." Alexander took a slow, deep breath before starting. "The people behind the children. It's not just some greedy scientists or shady corporations. It's way more sinister. We're dealing with a covert government operation known as Project Genesis." A chill ran through Joseph. "The government? But why?" "Think about it, Joseph," Alexander replied, inching closer. "Genetically modified kids with fast-tracked growth. Imagine the military potential. Soldiers grown in labs, ready for combat in years, not decades." The horrifying truth hit Joseph like a hard blow to the stomach. "My God, Alexander, what have we done?" "I didn't know." Alexander's voice trembled with guilt. "When I first got into this, I thought we were just pushing science forward, helping couples who couldn't have kids. But then, I discovered what was really going on. Joseph fought to keep his anger in check. "And why are you telling me now?" "Because they're closing in," Alexander replied, his fear unmistakable. "And there's more." He slid a USB drive across the table. "This has everything I know about Project Genesis, including info on the children's birth mother." Joseph froze. "Birth mother? You said my DNA was the only one used." Alexander looked down, regret written on his face. "Another lie I had to tell you, Joseph. The children have a mother. And you know her." The world spun around Joseph. "Who?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Alexander hesitated before answering. "Samantha Saunders." The revelation left Joseph stunned. Memories of Samantha, her gentle presence around the kids, the way they seemed to bond with her instantly. All of it fell into place with a dreadful clarity. "Does she know?" Joseph asked, his voice shaking. Alexander shook his head. "I'm not sure." "But listen, Joseph, Samantha is more than just their biological mother. She was involved in the project from the very beginning. I don't even know where her loyalties lie." Joseph felt his world crumble. Could Samantha, the one he trusted with his heart and home, have been a spy? "No," he murmured, almost to himself. "There must be some mistake. Samantha loves the kids. I've seen it." Alexander placed a reassuring hand on his. "I know it's hard, but you have to be careful. The children's lives depend on it." Before Joseph could respond, screeching tires outside caught their attention. Through the cafe's dusty window, they saw black SUVs pulling up at high speed. "They found us," Alexander said, panic in his voice. "Joseph, you need to go. Now." Joseph shot to his feet. "Come with me, Alexander. We'll protect you." Alexander shook his head, resolute. "It's too late for me. Go. Protect the children. And Joseph, watch out for Samantha." Joseph, carrying a heavy heart, rushed to his car. The flash drive securely tucked in his pocket, he sped down the road, catching a glimpse in his rearview mirror of the SUVs swarming around the cafe. The sight of Alexander, alone and resigned, stayed fixed in his mind. The drive back to the cottage felt like a blur. Thoughts raced through Joseph's mind. Government involvement, the true purpose of the project, and, most unsettling of all, Samantha's part in it. By the time he arrived at the estate, night had fallen. The soft glow of the house lights through the trees would usually be a comfort. But now, Joseph only felt a rising sense of unease. As he parked, he took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. The kids needed him to stay strong and clear-headed, and with Samantha, he had to get to the bottom of everything. With resolute steps, Joseph made his way to the house. Every stride took him closer to a confrontation that could change everything. Yet one thing was clear in his mind. He would protect Sean, Dennis, and Peter at all costs, even if it meant facing Samantha head-on. As he opened the door, the laughter of children and the aroma of freshly baked cookies filled the air, momentarily grounding him. For a split second, Joseph faltered, the scene's warmth clashing with the turmoil in his thoughts. "Joseph," Samantha's voice called from the kitchen. "Is that you?" Taking a final, steadying breath, Joseph closed the door. This was it. He had to face the truth, no matter how hard it would be. He walked into the kitchen, the sweet smell of cookies at odds with his rising tension. Samantha, her back turned, pulled a tray from the oven, while the kids played energetically in the other room. "Joseph, I'm so happy you're back," she said, turning with a smile that quickly faded as she saw his somber expression. "Is everything okay?" she asked, worry touching her eyes. Joseph hesitated, caught between the desire to tell her everything and the weight of Alexander's shocking revelations. "Samantha, we need to talk, in private." She nodded, her concern deepening. "Of course. Kids, keep playing. We'll be right back." Joseph guided her into the office, shutting the door behind them. For a brief moment, silence hung in the air. The atmosphere was thick with hidden truths. "What's going on, Joseph?" Samantha asked quietly, her voice a mixture of worry and curiosity. Taking a deep breath, Joseph got right to it. "Samantha, I know about Project Genesis, about your role, and that you're the children's biological mother." The shock that crossed Samantha's face was undeniable. She wavered, steadying herself against the table behind her. How did you find out?" she whispered. "Alexander told me everything," Joseph replied, observing her closely. "But what I don't get is, why lie? Why keep something so big from me?" Samantha closed her eyes briefly, as if gathering her thoughts. When she looked at him again, tears filled her gaze. "I wanted to tell you, Joseph, so many times. But I was terrified." "Terrified of what?" he asked, his voice edged with both frustration and confusion. "Of losing all this," Samantha gestured around her. "Of losing you. And the kids." She took shaky breath. "When I first joined the project, I had no idea what it was truly about. By the time I understood, I was already too deep." Joseph's anger began to ease as he took in her distress. "But why keep it from me all this time? Why not tell me when we met?" Samantha stepped closer, her eyes pleading with him to understand. "Because I fell in love with you, with the children. I saw the family we were building, and I wanted so desperately to be a part of it. But I knew if I told the truth, I'd lose it all." Silence filled the room, heavy and tense. Joseph wrestled with his emotions, struggling between trusting her and holding back. Finally, he asked, "And Project Genesis? Are you still involved?" Samantha shook her head, her voice firm. "No, I left the moment I understood what they were really up to. That's why I became a social worker, to protect children like ours." Joseph looked at her, searching for any sign she might still be hiding something, but all he saw was sincerity and regret. With her voice breaking, Samantha continued, "I know I should have told you sooner, but every choice I made was to keep our family safe." The word family echoed in Joseph's mind. Deep down, despite everything, he realized he thought of Samantha as part of his family. Before he could respond, a sudden scream from the living room shattered the quiet. Joseph and Samantha rushed out of the office, hearts pounding. In the living room, they saw Sean clinging to his brothers, pointing toward the window with wide, fearful eyes. "Daddy, there are men outside." Joseph hurried to the window, his blood running cold as he spotted several black SUVs pulling up to the house. Project Genesis had tracked them down. Joseph glanced at Samantha and saw the same fear mixed with determination in her eyes. In that instant, any doubts and bitterness faded. They now shared a single mission: to protect the kids. "Samantha, get the boys to the basement. There's a hidden passage that leads out of the property," he instructed urgently. Samantha nodded, gathering the children swiftly. "What about you?" she asked, her voice tense. Joseph took a final look out the window, watching the Kenneths draw closer. "I'll hold them off to give you a chance to escape." "Joseph, no," Samantha whispered, gripping his arm. "Come with us." They locked eyes, a flood of understanding and love washing over years of secrets and mistrust. "I'll catch up," he promised. He pressed a gentle kiss to Samantha's forehead before turning to the boys. "Sean, Dennis, listen to Samantha and stick together. Daddy loves you, okay?" The boys, their eyes brimming with tears, embraced Joseph tightly before following Samantha into the basement. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed as the Kenneths reached the door, and Joseph braced himself for the showdown. He knew the next few moments were crucial, not just for him, but for his newly bonded family's future. Taking one last look down the hall, where Samantha and the kids had disappeared, Joseph exhaled deeply and prepared to face what lay ahead. As the glass shattered with the Kenneth's entry, Joseph steadied himself, heart pounding but resolute. He moved quickly, taking a strategic position in the room. "Mr. Ellis," a stern voice called out, "we know you're here. Surrender the children and no one will be harmed." Joseph breathed in, buying time. "Who are you, and why do you want my children?" A man in a dark suit stepped forward, clearly the leader. "I'm Kenneth Patterson. These kids belong to the United States government. They need to be returned to complete the project for which they were created." "They're children, not government property," Joseph shot back, his voice filled with both anger and conviction. "They deserve a normal life, a chance to be loved." Patterson let out a dry chuckle. "Mr. Ellis, you're missing the big picture here. These kids aren't just children. They're the future of our national defense." The idea of genetically engineered soldiers, trained and prepared in record time, had crossed Joseph's mind before, but hearing it out loud still sent a chill down his spine. The thought of his children being treated like tools of war was unthinkable. "Over my dead body," Joseph stated, with unwavering determination. Just then, and Kenneth's voice echoed from upstairs. "Sir, the house is cleared. There's no trace of the kids." Patterson glared at Joseph, his voice sharp. "Where are they, Ellis?" Joseph's lips curved into a small smile, confidence growing. "Somewhere you'll never find them, and that's exactly how it'll stay." The air in the room grew tense, each second ticking by with Joseph hoping Samantha and the kids had a safe escape route. Suddenly, the thunder of helicopter rotors filled the air, casting beams of bright light through the shattered windows of the house. A booming voice rang out, "Attention! Project Genesis! This is the FBI. The property is surrounded. Stand down and surrender." Patterson and his men exchanged stunned glances. Relief and confusion washed over Joseph as he processed what was happening. The answer to the unspoken question came as a familiar face entered through the back, flanked by FBI Kenneths. "Alexander," Joseph gasped, barely believing his eyes. The scientist looked worn out, but resolute. He gave Joseph a nod. "Sorry I'm late, old friend. I had to make sure the truth reached the right people." As FBI Kenneth swept through the house, neutralizing and arresting the Project Genesis members, Alexander came closer to Joseph. "I owed it to you and your kids," he said quietly. "I hid in the shadows for too long, but when I saw you putting everything on the line for them, I knew it was time to act." Joseph, still piecing it all together, placed a hand on Alexander's shoulder. "Thank you. You don't know how much this means to me." With the threat finally fading, Joseph's mind went to his family. Samantha and the kids. As if answering his silent wish, Samantha appeared in the doorway, their 3 sons huddled close beside her. Her gaze locked onto his, filled with gratitude and love. "Daddy!" the boys cried, running to him. Joseph wrapped them in his arms, feeling years of anxiety and worry dissolve in their embrace. Looking past the boys, he noticed Samantha approaching, her eyes glistening with joyful tears. "Is it really over?" she whispered. Joseph extended his arm, wrapping her in a warm, familiar hug. "Yes, sweetheart, it's over." In the days that followed, Project Genesis's secrets unraveled, shocking Washington and prompting investigations across multiple government branches. With his legal team's expertise and Alexander's critical testimony, Joseph secured full custody of Sean, Dennis, and Peter, along with legal protections to prevent future exploitation. Samantha, after disclosing her initial involvement, was cleared of any wrongdoing, with authorities acknowledging her actions to protect the children. 1 week after the confrontation, Joseph found himself once more on the porch of the country house, gazing out at the sunset. Samantha joined him, her fingers intertwining with his. "What's on your mind?" she asked gently. Joseph smiled, glancing toward the living room where the kids played joyfully. "Just thinking about how quickly life can turn around. I used to be just a business-driven man not so long ago. And now you're a father," Samantha added, smiling. "And you're a mother," Joseph said, facing her fully. "Samantha, I know there have been secrets and hard truths between us, but I want you to know I love you. I love the family we've built together." Tears brimmed in Samantha's eyes. "I love you too, Joseph, more than I ever imagined." They shared a tender kiss, while the sound of the children's laughter echoed through the air. Joseph knew challenges still lay ahead. Raising these 3 extraordinary boys wouldn't be easy, but with Samantha by his side and the love they shared, he felt ready to face whatever came their way. Night fell over Vermont, signaling the close of one chapter and the dawn of another. The Ellis family, united by fate, science, and love, was prepared to face the future together. 5 years had passed since that unforgettable night in Vermont. Sunlight streamed through the curtains of their New York penthouse as the Ellis family prepared for the day. Joseph, seated at the kitchen table, watched with pride as Sean, Dennis, and Peter, now 9 years old, excitedly geared up for their first day of 4th grade. "Dad, have you seen my new backpack?" Peter asked, scanning the room. "It's hanging in your closet, buddy," Joseph replied with a smile. Samantha walked into the kitchen with a tray of warm pancakes, freshly made and steaming. "Right where you left it last night?" she said with a gentle smile. Joseph couldn't help but admire how bright Samantha looked, even with the usual morning bustle around her. Over the years, her bond with the boys had deepened, becoming just as strong as any mother's. "Thanks, Mum," Peter called out, racing to his room. Sean, always the prepared one, was already seated, sorting through his school supplies. "Dad, do you think the teacher will mind if I bring a few extra books?" "There's so much I want to learn this year," he asked, his face full of anticipation. Joseph smiled, recognizing in Sean that same curiosity he had at that age. "I'm sure she'll love your enthusiasm, buddy." Dennis, meanwhile, was quietly stirring his breakfast, lost in thought. Joseph and Samantha exchanged a concerned look. "Everything okay, Dennis?" Samantha asked softly, sitting beside him. He shrugged, avoiding eye contact. "What if the other kids figure out we're different? What if they find out about, Joseph felt a pang in his chest. Even though they had worked hard to give the boys a sense of normalcy, the shadow of their unusual beginning occasionally lingered. Joseph knelt beside Dennis, resting a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Son, remember what we've always said. It's not about how you came into this world. It's about who you are. Your kindness, your intelligence, the goodness in your heart. That's what truly matters." Samantha joined them, wrapping her arms around Dennis. "And no matter what happens, in this family, you're loved just as you are." Dennis's eyes softened, a small smile creeping onto his face. "Thanks, Mum and Dad." Just then, Peter and Sean returned, ready to head out. As they were preparing to leave, Joseph's phone buzzed. It was Alexander. "Joseph, good morning," came the scientist's excited voice. "Just wanted to wish the boys luck on their first day at school. Oh, and I have some news about our research." In recent years, Joseph had been supporting Alexander's work, now dedicated to using the technology that had led to the triplets' birth to research cures for genetic diseases. "That's fantastic news, Alexander," Joseph responded, feeling both pride and appreciation. "Let's catch up later." The boys hung up the phone, filled with excitement. Joseph joined his family outside the apartment, where Samantha was making sure the boys' backpacks were secure, her gaze warm and full of motherly affection. "Is everyone ready for a new adventure?" Joseph asked, smiling at his sons. The boys eagerly nodded, though Dennis's face showed a touch of nervousness. As they rode the elevator down, Joseph found himself thinking back on the remarkable path that had led them here, from a solitary billionaire to a devoted dad, from secrecy and complications to a family bonded by love. Every hurdle they had faced had only made them stronger. In the lobby, before stepping outside, Joseph gathered everyone for a close-knit group hug. "Remember, kids," he said softly, "whatever happens today or any day, you've always got each other, and you've got us." "Always," Samantha echoed, her voice filled with emotion. "You're our greatest adventure, our biggest love. Go out there and show the world what you're made of." With one last embrace and kiss, Sean, Dennis, and Peter headed eagerly to the car, ready to start the new school year. Joseph and Samantha watched hand in hand as the car pulled away. "They're going to be all right, right?" Samantha asked, a bit of worry in her tone. Joseph smiled, pulling her close. "They'll be just fine. They're strong, smart, and most importantly, loved." Together, they returned to their apartment, and Joseph reflected on the transformation in his life. The emptiness he once knew had been replaced with love, laughter, and the joy of seeing his kids grow. The obstacles they'd encountered had only deepened their family bond. In his office, Joseph paused in front of a framed photo. It captured a moment of pure happiness, he and Samantha surrounded by their children, smiling on a picnic in Central Park. It was a picture of everything they had become. "Who would have thought," Joseph murmured to himself, "that the past could lead to something this beautiful?" Just then, Samantha entered the office, wrapping her arms around him from behind. "What's on your mind?" Joseph turned, locking eyes with the woman who had become his everything. "Just feeling thankful for you, the kids, and everything we've faced together." Samantha's reply was gentle. "I feel the same way. Every day with you feels like a blessing." They shared a quiet kiss, and Joseph felt a profound sense of peace and wholeness. Where once he had looked at the future with worry and doubt, now he saw it bright and filled with hope. The trials they'd endured had not only strengthened them, but had grown into a deeply rooted family that could weather any storm. Joseph was sure of one thing. Whatever came their way, they'd face it together, as the family they were always meant to be. Imagine discovering, like Joseph, that your children were created in a secret genetic experiment. What hard choices would you make to protect them and secure their future? How far would you go to keep your family intact against powerful forces determined to pull you apart? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you liked the story, please subscribe to our channel and drop a comment below with your thoughts. Your support and feedback means so much to us. Stay tuned for more captivating stories.